What's up? We're back, and we're here to talk about the waiver wire. Waiver wire for week 4. Not great. Gotta say, it's not great. It's not nearly as good as week 3 was. In week 3, I gave you a lot of pickups. A lot of them didn't matter. A lot of the guys came towards the end of the week, whether it was Alexander Madison or Peyton Barber, who went for like 100 something yards and a touchdown. I don't know what's going on in Las Vegas. That kind of kicked me in the teeth trying to tell you guys to start Kenyon Drake last week. It's just not working out there, but we have a few more pickups for you guys this week. Again, it's not great. So don't expect to either blow all your fab or your number one waiver priority this week, aside from one player, which I'm sure you can guess he's on the thumbnail. But without getting too deep into it, let's hit the intro.
You can't keep getting away with it! You can't keep getting away with it!
As far as quarterbacks go, I typically stick with guys who are a good streaming option, whether it's like Tyrod Taylor early in the season, or I think I told people to start Teddy Bridgewater here or there. I don't even know. I said to pick up Deshaun Watson. Shit wasn't working out for me. This one's a little bit different. I'm going with Derek Carr of the Las Vegas Raiders, still owned in less than 60% of leagues, and that's per Yahoo. So I don't know if Yahoo is completely correct all the time. All I know is Derek Carr is slinging that ball. Their running game is iffy. Kenyon Drake, the certified lover boy, is just playing second fiddle to whoever decides to step up in that backfield. Peyton Barber's a scrub. And listen, the receiving options aren't all that great. Aside from Darren Waller, they really don't have anybody that's all too established, but Henry Ruggs has been looking good. Hunter Renfrow is a solid and reliable option. Bryan Edwards has been coming alive every single time they go into overtime. And Derek Carr, for all intents and purposes, has looked the part. And he's played 3 pretty solid teams in the Ravens, the Steelers, and the Dolphins thus far. His next few games don't get all that much easier, playing the Chargers, Chicago, and Denver. Denver being the best defense of the bunch. But I don't even care. He's averaging 45 attempts a game. He's on pace for like a wild amount of yards. I mean, I can tell you what the number is, but it wouldn't matter because it's not going to happen. But I'll tell you anyways, 6,416 yards, 32 touchdowns. He's not running the ball a lot, which you want out of fantasy quarterbacks. But guess what? Shit doesn't matter when you're throwing the ball 40, 50, maybe even 60 soon to come times a game. High floor option on a team with a myriad of weapons that, although none of them are elite aside from Waller, they all have their own skill set and a diverse skill set at that to help him become a viable weekly starter. I really think he's a back-end quarterback one for the rest of the season. So if he's on your waiver wire and you hate streaming players, he's almost a must start every single week, aside from owning guys like Kyler Murray, Lamar, Tom Brady, Matt Stafford. You get it. There's like 8 or 9 guys that you can't start Derek Carr over. If you don't own one of them, just pick up Derek Carr and use him for the rest of the year. I can't believe I'm about to say this name, but Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold can be a viable starter for you this week, the week after, and the week after that. I'm not saying he's in that Derek Carr vein where you can use him for the rest of the year, but his next 3 matchups are Dallas, Philly, and Minnesota. Dallas has looked pretty good in defense, so that might be a spot that you want to sort of avoid. But then again, Christian McCaffrey's going to be out. And then again, Dallas loves to run up the score. And then again, this offense in Carolina is really starting to hum like prime Kid Cudi. I really like what Sam Darnold's been doing. He hasn't thrown all too many touchdowns, but he's throwing the ball a shit ton, averaging over 35 attempts a game. He's even running a little bit. He has 3 rushing touchdowns on the season. And I do think with Christian McCaffrey out and the myriad of weapons that they have in the receiving game, whether it's DJ Moore, Terrace Marshall, Robbie Anderson, now they even have an athletic tight end like Tommy Tremble taking over for Dan Arnold. Out of the backfield, they have an explosive playmaker like Chuba Hubbard. I think he's in line for 2 or 3 very good matchups in the near future. And it's only going to cost you like $1 bid in your fab budget. So I'd go for it if you're in need of a quarterback. As far as running back goes, I could tell you to pick up Peyton Barber, but I don't see him having any sort of role once Josh Jacobs is back in the fold. I could tell you to pick up like JJ Taylor or Brandon Bolden, but you barely even want to own Damian Williams at this point. Why would you want to own the second or third string running back in New England? I'm going to stick with guys that I think can be not league winners, but actual starters for you on a week-to-week basis for a certain amount of time. Number 1 is Chuba Hubbard. You are spending your number 1 waiver priority on him. You are spending upwards of 30% of your fab on him. Christian McCaffrey may only be out 1, 2, or 3 weeks, but that's what we thought last year with his ankle. And that's what we thought last year again when I think it was his hip. He hurt it at the end of the season. They shut him down. I assume with Carolina being competitive this year, they want to get him back on the field as early as possible without risking further re-injury. So if it's going to be 3 weeks, still Chuba Hubbard over those next 3 weeks in those matchups I just talked about with Sam Darnold, whether it's Philly, whether it's Dallas, whether it's Minnesota, all pretty favorable matchups for a guy who seems to be like a 70% plus snap share type of player. We saw the workload he got once Christian McCaffrey went down, and I get it. Like, they weren't expecting Royce Freeman to even touch the ball that game, so maybe he wasn't getting a whole lot of work because of that. But Royce Freeman has had years upon years upon years to prove anything in the league, and he's been bouncing around roster to roster. Finally found a home as a third stringer behind one of the highest usage rate running backs in the league, meaning he was never really expected to do much in this offense. I don't think he is the answer there. I think Chuba Hubbard can be a guy who can carve out 65 to 70% of the opportunity share in that backfield. And with that being the case, that's going to mean middling RB2 value, even if it's only for a handful of weeks. I'm sure if we look back to last year and you were only getting Mike Davis for 3 or 4 weeks, you would spend a good chunk of your fab on him because of the output that he gave you and the value over replacement that he offered in comparison to other waiver wire options. And number 2, I have Jeff Wilson Jr. Now, he is not eligible to return until week 7. And you may be thinking, week 7, that's so far away. That's why you got to pick him up. Everyone thinks week 7 is so far away, whereas week 7 is almost as far away right now as what week 1 was to right now. Week 1, 3 weeks away. Week 7, like 4 weeks away. If my math adds up correctly, I don't know. Don't double check me on that. Regardless, we have seen the San Francisco backfield, how it's shaken out. Mostert out for the year. Elijah Mitchell, one really good run in week 1, got banged up, and he didn't even look that great before he got banged up in week 2. Trey Sermon was a healthy scratch, then didn't play, and didn't look great this past week. Jaquez Patrick, the fucking rapper, can't even get on the field. Kerryon Johnson, his knees are made of fucking cobwebs. He can't get on the field. They brought in like Duke Johnson to train him. They brought in Chris Thompson. They have nothing here. Yet, Jeff Wilson Jr. is still on this team. Over the last 7 games of 2020, when he was commanding a pretty big workload, he was averaging over 88 total yards a game and a touchdown in that span. I think he is the best running back and the best fit in this offense once he comes back. But him missing almost a year's worth of football means it'll probably take a few weeks for him to ramp up to the back that we saw towards the end of 2020. Even with that being the case, he looks to be a league winner. And if you go after him right now, he could only cost you 1 to 2 or 3 fab bucks, as opposed to in week 6 when they're coming off their bye into week 7 and there's reports that he's coming back. It's going to be $20, $30 because people are going to start looking back at his numbers from last year and being like, oh, Trey Sermon isn't looking good. This guy's better. Oh, Elijah Mitchell can't hold up. This guy's better. I think if neither Sermon or Mitchell really show what they're worth over these next few weeks, Jeff Wilson Jr. has as good a shot as any to lead this backfield. And it's a very coveted role being led by Kyle Shanahan's offense. I'll touch on tight end real quick because there's really not many of them that I care about. The only one is like Pat Friarmuth, very talented tight end out of Penn State. Called him Baby Gronk. He's better than Eric Ebron. Deontay Johnson can't stay healthy. Big Ben can only throw 3 yards down the field. Pat Friarmuth is going to walk into a role that sees 4, 5, 6 targets a game. That's not a whole lot, but it's enough for you to be able to stream him as a tight end 2 option from here on out. And there's only like 6 or 7 good tight ends in the league anyway. So if you don't own one of them, why not pick up Pat? In the final position of note, we have wide receiver. There's a few guys I like here. I like Emmanuel Sanders a lot. He looks to be the wide receiver 2 in Buffalo. They spread the ball around a whole hell of a lot, but he seems to be a consistent contributor and a consistent recipient of these passes week over week. Josh Allen missed him very narrowly the first few weeks on some deep throws. They finally connected this past week. He looks good. He looks spry. He looks, dare I say, elite out there. And I think he can be a wide receiver 3 or 4 option for you going forward because this team just wants to pass the ball. They want to blow teams out. And to blow teams out, you got to get a big lead. And what other way to get a big lead than throwing to Emmanuel Sanders, Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley, and you name it. To be able to get these big leads, they got to score. And Emmanuel Sanders looks to be the second option in this offense. So I would go out and spend 5 to 10% of your fab on him. In a similar vein, we have Christian Kirk and AJ Green. Both of them, I don't really love what AJ Green has to offer this late in his career. Christian Kirk, kind of a similar sentiment. We've seen what he is. He's finally healthy for a little bit, and he's finally in an offense that wants to use him. Obviously the same team, but they've carved out a role for him that's kind of consistent. We knew the talent was there coming out of college, just kind of coming into fruition now. Again, though, I would only spend probably 10% of your fab on Kirk, maybe 5% on AJ Green, just because it's an offense that likes to spread the ball around. And despite them producing and seeing pretty consistent target volume to this point, there's going to be those weeks where it's an absolute headache and either guy puts up a fucking donut because they decide to throw to Trent Sherfield, who's not even on the team anymore, instead of one of those 2 options. And quite possibly my favorite sleeper waiver wire pickup of the week is Rashod Bateman. He is eligible to return this week. We don't know if he's going to be back this week at this point of the week. I've said week a million times, and I can tell that you guys are probably getting bored of me saying it. But He was my wide receiver one heading into this class, ahead of Jamar Chase, ahead of Jalen Waddle and Devonta Smith and Rondell Moore, which doesn't say a lot because I get a lot of things fucking wrong. But he's in an offense that we thought wasn't going to be able to support more than one receiving option. But we're seeing Sammy Watkins do pretty well. We're seeing Marquise Brown doing very well. And if he had caught some passes this past week from Lamar Jackson, he would be like a top 3, 4, 5 receiver in fantasy right now. Mark Andrews even turns it on. I think Bateman can really step into a role where he can be the wide receiver one in Baltimore as early as probably not week 4, but maybe week 5. And with that being the case and him being a true possession receiver on a team that has a quarterback as elite and as dominant and as improvisational as Lamar Jackson, who can extend plays and find Rashod Bateman deep down the field or in the flats or over the middle when the play breaks down and can be a red zone option for him, I really do think that his upside could be a top 15 receiver. I'm not saying pick him up with those expectations, but I could see a very similar path to touches as a guy like Jamar Chase, who going into the year, we weren't sure if he was going to be a highly targeted guy on a team with T. Higgins and Joe Mixon and Tyler Boyd. Kind of the same case in Baltimore for Rashod Bateman, saying that they have Mark Andrews and Sammy Watkins and Marquise Brown and a stable of running backs who you probably can't even name and they don't catch passes, but I think talent will win out. And I think Rashod Bateman has ample talent to be able to be at least a wide receiver 3 for you, somebody that's only going to cost you like 5% of your fab right now. And that's all I got for today. Obviously, scour your waiver wire if injuries happen throughout the week or if guys like Sony Michel are on the waiver wire, because I know they're owned in more than 60% of the leagues on consensus. But if in your league he's on the waiver wire, go out and spend for him. But just make sure to monitor injuries throughout the week. Chris Carson, I heard, was maybe banged up, so look for Alex Collins. I heard Aaron Jones might have been banged up, so look for AJ Dillon or Kylan Hill. Just small things like that could help you win your week because nobody was really expecting Dalvin Cook to sit last week. And towards the end of it, we saw that he wasn't practicing. You pick up Alexander Madison, and he probably won you your matchup if you grabbed him. So that's it for today. Tomorrow we got trade targets, buy lows and sell highs. And to be honest, I'm probably going to record it right now. So if I look exactly the same, that is the reason why. That's it for today. We'll catch you guys tomorrow. Peace.